Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Cherylee Houston, an actor in Coronation Street and an activist on disability issues, and from Westminster by the Conservative MP David Burrowes, who has been supportive of Iain Duncan Smith. Cherylee Houston, when you hear David Cameron saying we are a compassionate One Nation party, and Nicky Morgan just now reiterating that, what do you think?
I don't understand how they can use the word compassion against a group of people they've systematically cut and cut and cut. These cuts are the final tip of the cuts they've done to us. We have lost, at the start of March, we lost £30 a week for ESA for the RAG. Last year, on June the 30th, we lost ILF. ILF cost £345, the Independent Living Fund, to ensure disabled people could live independently in their own homes. The average cost of a care home is £738 a week. It makes no economical sense. It's like access to work. For every pound the government puts in, £1.42 comes back out. At the moment, people in Manchester, if you've got high support needs, you get entitled to be washed, dressed and fed. And fed is being given a ready meal. There's no care provision for outside the house, for shopping, for all the basic human needs before you even begin to put the colour of a life in there.
So you're not reassured
Not at all
by today?
As disabled people, we're still looking over our shoulder to see where they're going to get us next. It makes no sense. You're picking on a group of people who have fought so hard to be equal in this society. We got the right to education. We came out of care homes, of institutions in the 80s. And it's like all that work by people, by generations of people, is gone in one sweep from this government.
David Burrowes, do you know what government policy is tonight? We're very confused whether further welfare cuts are being ruled out for the rest of this Parliament, or whether it's just that there are no plans now, but there might be plans tomorrow or next week.
Well, the new Secretary of State was clear that there are no plans for welfare savings. You can try and look at different wording around it. There's nothing on the table.
Well, what do you understand by it? Do you think that rules out any welfare cuts for the rest of this Parliament?
In my mind, it's saying that there's no welfare cuts on the table, that the focus is on
off the table
reform.
or on the table. I mean, just be clear.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
That there's nothing there for anyone to say this is a plan, this is going to happen.
Yeah, I know there's nothing there. I'm still none the wiser. It appears none of you. I mean,
well, I am. I'm saying that there's a commitment that there aren't going to be any welfare savings, and if there was any plans for future, then we'd have to know about it. And there's nothing there.
But there's nothing left to cut.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's the problem. There's nothing left to cut.
Can I take issue with what we heard? And the point that was made earlier is that we can't just simply look at like personal independence payments, of which I was very pleased we haven't gone ahead with the cuts. I myself called for us not to do that. But the point that the Secretary was saying today is quite rightly looking at the human dimension. The additional cost of disability means social care, health, housing. We need to look in the round rather than picking off a cut here or there. There needs to be a proper reform to make sure that we have an integrated support for disabled people. And
do you know
that's the
why
way
that
forward.
hasn't happened, though? I mean, if you're saying that's what we need.
I mean, it's interesting that the budget did have a line which said we're going to have this long-term future reform, but sadly also included was this slicing off with the personal independence payment, and that was what was highly regrettable. The future reforms are welcome because certainly we need to do better, and I mean the campaign there won't.
It makes no sense though, because if you're talking about individual cuts, at the moment we've now got disabled people who a few years ago had full active lives, and now they're being offered incontinence pads because they're only allowed 5 toilet helps a day. It makes no sense. But at the moment you have got disabled people in this country, prisoners in their own homes. Prisoners have a panic button and somebody will come. People who have had overnight care, disabled children will never live independently under this government.
Can I just ask you, Cherylee, about a specific thing? Because David Burrowes voted for the cut to ESA that you mentioned. What is the impact of that cut? Just explain to him and then I'll get his
It hasn't come in
response.
yet, has it?
But people... Yeah, but that doesn't matter. That's for people.
No, you said it comes in March. It didn't come in until 2017.
But it was voted in this year.
Well, but the budget...
That cut means that people who have been deemed able to work... Now, let me just give you an example. A woman who was going on one of those assessments was stuck in a car for 6 hours in terrible pain, but because of the traffic jam, she was then told that she was capable of work, because if you can go in a car for 6 hours, if you can lift a cardboard box above your head, you're capable of work. If you can put a straw in a cup of Complan, you are able to make your own food.
And
it's just
let David Burrowes answer.
And that's why I'm with you, saying the current system, the status quo, which was wanting to try and encourage people into work, 2% are getting into work, whilst we've had improvements in that area, we must ensure that people who need support could properly be in the support group, but getting the right support. I'm not defending the status quo, and I don't think you are as well. The previous outdated disability living allowance, or the way people dealt with people people on this work-related activity group wasn't producing the proper outcomes of either support for independent living or getting them into work. That's why the budget has actually said £50 million must go to this group. We must also work before we get to 2017 with a white paper to bring about long-term reform. And that's what we should be about, long-term reform, rather than these cuts that thankfully were not happening in relation to
David
PIPs.
Burrowes, let me just ask you finally, I mean, you have somebody here in the studio who's clearly not convinced by today's attempt to reassure her. Do you honestly think the government has rethought since Iain Duncan Smith's resignation? Has he made them stop in their tracks?
Well, I think there's a combination. I've been calling out on others. I think the Secretary of State, the new Secretary of State said himself, he's pressing the reset button. And that's very important. He wants to go out to talk to campaigners, to activists, to individuals, to make sure that we recognise the human dimension here and don't treat this as a budget book issue, but one of properly giving people dignity in independence and getting into work where appropriate. And that is a welcome approach. I don't think it's any different from Iain Duncan Smith's approach as well, but I think that Stephen Crabb will now be able to take that forward with the commitment today that there won't be further welfare savings.
David Burrowes, Cherylee Houston, thank you very much indeed for coming.